Hello, and welcome to Approaches for Enabling and Protecting a Hybrid Workforce. Today's webinar is sponsored by Nasuni and Google Cloud and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Scott Becker. I'm from Actual Tech Media, and I'm excited to be your moderator for this special event. Now, before we get to today's great content, we do have a few housekeeping details that will help you get the most out of this session. First off, we want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the questions box in our webinar control panel. Not only will we have team members responding to questions during the live event, we'll also have dedicated Q&A at the end of the presentation where we'll discuss in greater detail some of the top questions that you ask. The Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues that you might experience. A browser refresh is going to fix most of those. But if that doesn't work, just let us know in the Q&A and we'll be happy to help you with any technical assistance. Now, in the handout section of your webinar control panel, you'll also find that we're offering several resources. First, there's a PDF data sheet for Nasuni Access Anywhere. Also in the handouts is a link to the Gorilla Guide Book Club, where you can get access to Actual Tech Media's great printed resources on technology topics, as well as a link to the ATM Event Center, which has our calendar of upcoming events. So I encourage you to access those resources now and share them with your friends and colleagues. Now, at the end of this webinar event, we will be awarding a $300 Amazon gift card to one lucky registrant. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for the prize. Official terms and conditions of today's prize drawing can be found in the handout section. Just scroll to the bottom and you'll find the prize terms and conditions link there. Now, finally, one of the best benefits of this event is the opportunity to ask a question of our expert presenters. So to help encourage your questions, we have a special additional prize for you. That's another Amazon gift card, this one for $50 for the best question. So at the end of the event, we'll look at all the questions, pick out the very best one, and contact that prize winner. And with that, let's get to today's fantastic content. So it is my pleasure to introduce you to our presenters today. We have John Capello, who's Vice President of Strategy and Field CTO for Nasuni. And we have Ben LaValle, who's Director of Customer Engineering at Google. John, Ben, welcome to the webinar.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Well, thanks for being here. And John, I'll turn it over to you to get us started.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone at Scott and everyone at Actual Tech for hosting this and giving us this opportunity to talk to everyone here about how both of our companies are developing a solution that really makes it much easier to both enable and protect the hybrid workforce. And so what you're going to hear today is a little bit about Google and about the Google structure, the Google Cloud that creates the opportunity for companies like us at Nasuni to develop products and solutions on top of that so that your users can access your data from anywhere. And so what you're going to hear from Nasuni is how we use the Google Cloud, how we use Google infrastructure to be able to let your users get the data that they need, the files that they need from wherever they need them. Ben's going to start off. He's going to talk about Google. He's going to pass over to me. I'm going to talk about Nasuni broadly. Then I'm going to talk about our Access Anywhere offering, which is a very new set of features for us. And then I am going to do the high wire act of a live demo. And it's a live demo, meaning like it's actually a live demo. There's, who knows what's going to happen, but it's a live demo. And the cool thing about the live demo is you're going to have the first look of anyone at an integration that we have with Google that I am very, very, very excited about. And I think you guys are going to be pretty amazed by it as well. So with that being said, everything that Scott said is true. We're giving away gift cards. Please ask really good questions. You've got the questions box there on your screen. And I'm going to head over to Ben right now.
Awesome. Thanks very much, John, and thanks, Scott. I'm really excited to be here today. My name is Ben LaValle. I lead the Google Cloud engineering team that works with our customers and partners in the Northeast region, including Nasuni. So thanks again for having me here today. At Google, we are guided by three principles. So I'm going to talk at a high level about how Google's approach to work has changed over the last couple of years and what we're seeing in the industry. We're guided by three principles: respect the user, respect the opportunity, and respect each other. And over the last few years, as the economy has shifted and the nature of work has transformed, it's been more important than ever for us to stick to these principles. As organizations transform, there's many considerations, right? You all are parts of organizations that are probably going through some level of transformation, and there's a lot of different things you have to take into consideration as you do that. If you nail your strategy, but you don't have the right talent, or you have the right strategy and the right talent, but you don't have the right tools in place to empower your talent, you're still going to have challenges. It's going to be hard to deliver against the goals of your company. So today, the Nasuni team is going to highlight some of the tools that they've developed that Nasuni provides to give organizations the right environment to empower your employees to deliver amazing results. I'm excited. I'm particularly excited for the live demo, so I'll pop some popcorn for that portion of it. Things are different. There's a stark contrast to how, between how we used to work and how work is getting done today, and even more so how it's going to get done in the future. It's important to have an open platform that anticipates your needs, supports teams of different size and construction and locations, and really try to bring some simplicity to what historically have been pretty complex workflows, and many times unnecessarily complex. A lot of these trends were in motion before COVID-19, right? Before the pandemic kind of fast-tracked a lot of the changes to the way that we're working together. But boy, have they accelerated in the last 3 years or so. The average employee, Google does a lot of research on this in this space, both within our own company, over 100,000 employees distributed globally, and with our customers and partners and just the economy in general, right? The average employee reports feeling overworked and overwhelmed right now. Most technology actually exacerbates this problem, right? If you think about the always-on mentality, technology sort of getting in the way, information overload, it can actually, tools that are intended to help bring people together to collaborate effectively can actually sometimes create silos between people, teams, information. It can add a bunch of unnecessary steps and processes to getting things done. And in many cases, this is actually kind of counter to what your organization is trying to achieve. People end up wasting valuable time, right? We've all probably, had one of these journeys in our career. You end up wasting time managing different tools, and instead of using your time on high value, human-centered collaboration, we've found that 20% of an employee's time is actually spent just looking for the right information, right? Going through a convoluted workflow like the one on this slide here. This is like hiring 5 people, right? And having one of them never show up for work because that wasted productivity is spent just trying to find the information that's needed to be effective at one's job. This is a little bit, meant to be a joke, but, people, I think we all believe that people are our most important asset, right? And if they're burned out, or your business and your customers are suffering as a result of this burnout, that's a really bad thing. So you want to be sure that your people are working on the right stuff and that you're not wasting their time, right? That you're taking advantage of tools that can help keep people productive and in flow and focused, right? The workplace is transforming, right? I don't think this is a surprise to anybody at this point, but it's worth sort of reiterating. Work can be done anywhere. There's a blur between the home and office. I know that I've experienced that in my life. I was always a 5 days in the office type of employee before early 2020, and my world has totally changed since then. COVID and the pandemic and the sort of accelerated adoption of remote and hybrid work has really stretched people in unprecedented ways. People need to be connected. People need to feel that sense of collaboration. And, Google's focus and Nasuni's focus is to provide for our customers and partners and users tools that will allow you to cope with some of these challenges and just work effectively together. Remote's the new normal. We've all had to make big adjustments. Everything became virtual, meetings, documents, even hallway conversations. We had sort of what I would call a hallway conversation in the run up to this webinar, right? And that all happens virtually now. But, you know, for a while, I think people thought this was a temporary situation, and it's not, right? This is actually a catalyst that's going to accelerate the transition to a more flexible and distributed team environment. There might be exceptions to that. There are jobs that can't be done remotely, but we're seeing this trend at Google. We're seeing this trend clearly from both, you know, our own employees, from my employer, Google, and from our customers and partners. You know, all of this isn't without its challenges, obviously, right? Most teams actually, you know, the reality is that most companies we talk to are still using legacy technology that's made it hard to adjust to remote work. They've scrambled to keep their teams connected, much less collaborating the way that they're used to when everybody was together in an office, right? Point solutions, sometimes quick fixes are available, but they're often hard to manage. They're hard to keep secure. It's hard to keep things appropriately connected or disconnected, you know, to other tools and processes throughout your organization. So now's really a good opportunity to rethink how you support your workforce and set up an environment where your business can continue to operate and thrive. So some quick statistics that I'll share with you. 86% of virtual teams report experiencing difficulties in communication. Okay. This was a study that was done by HubSpot. 75% of remote workers say that they miss out on important information, access to communications, access to files that help them do their job as best as they can. And 37% rather, of remote workers believe that working from home can result in less visibility and access to their leadership. So these are real challenges, right? These matter to people and their ability to be productive and get what they want out of their careers. So at Google, we've changed our thinking on a lot of things, right? I won't get into all the details, but, you know, we've rethought, you know, which jobs are required to be in the office versus which ones aren't. How do we use our physical office space in the most effective way possible, right? It's really been in many ways an uncomfortable, but also like an exciting journey that we've been on over the last couple of years to really see this momentum and this shift in how people are thinking. And we're seeing this momentum not just at Google and with our products, right? But we're seeing it in the whole partner ecosystem. Google is very much a platform-focused company across many different parts of our business, right? The ads and search platforms, the Android mobile operating device platforms, the Google Cloud platform that allows companies to do all sorts of creative things using Google's infrastructure. Because we are a platform provider, we get to see all the cool stuff that the ecosystem is doing with our technology. And it's just like, it's really inspiring. So for those of you that aren't familiar, within Google Cloud, we have a marketplace, which is another platform, right? So it's a marketplace. It's an extension of your business. It's a procurement vehicle. It can be used in a number of different ways. It's a way for, you know, us to provide a curated digital catalog of solutions, and it's a place for our customers to find, deploy, manage the production ready solutions that you need to run your business that are built by our partners, by Google Cloud's partners. There are many ways to, you know, I'm sure that you can get access to Nasuni's technology in a number of different ways, but certainly if you're a Google Cloud customer, or if you're thinking of becoming one and you work with Nasuni, or you're thinking about working with Nasuni, the Google Cloud Marketplace is a potential way for you to take advantage of some of the synergies between our two organizations and have a single sort of view into your business systems through the Google Cloud Marketplace. So just wanted to sort of mention that. We've seen tremendous growth in the marketplace. I won't dwell on this, but what I will say is that we really value, starting at the very top of the organization, so Thomas Kurian's the CEO of Google Cloud, we really value the ecosystem in the Google Cloud platform. And it's awesome to see companies build things that integrate and run on Google Cloud and deliver value to you all and your businesses. So with that, I'm just going to say thank you. I appreciate the fact that Nasuni is such a great partner of Google Cloud. I appreciate you having me here. I wish everybody on this webinar best of luck figuring out what remote and hybrid and this transition of how we work and the tools that we use. I wish you the best in figuring it out for your organization. John's going to share with you one of the solutions that Nasuni has that provides great features and functions for our teams that are collaborating and sharing content and working in a distributed or kind of new remote hybrid kind of way. So I'm going to hand it over to John. Thank you again for having me. I'm going to stick around if anybody has questions, and I can't miss the demo. I'll go grab my popcorn and we'll see how it goes. All right. Thanks very much, John. Thank you all for having me.
Thanks so much, Ben. I appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that Ben was able to provide a foundation for how we're going to be thinking about these problems. And a couple of things I wanted to highlight first was he's absolutely right. There's a new normal here. There's a new normal where your workforce is distributed. When you have that problem of things becoming dispersed or distributed, one question you have to ask yourself is, okay, now I know that people are in different places. What do I need to centralize? How can I use this flexibility of the new platforms around Google, new platforms built around technologies built on top of that platform, to be able to centralize what I need to centralize and distribute what I need to distribute? And that's a hard technology problem to solve. It's a hard technology strategy problem to solve. When do I put things to the edge and when do I put things centralized? So Nasuni has a really clear perspective on that. And I'm going to start by talking about our foundational technology first and the problems that we solve. And then I'm going to get into this problem of how can you access that data anywhere with the new solution that we have. So let me start by talking about what is Nasuni. I've been talking about how we built this great thing on top of Google Cloud Platform. Nasuni solves a problem of how can I store, manage, access files. We like to say that we can store anything and we can protect it, store any data and we can protect it from anything. And what we mean by that is if you've got file shares, if you've got group shares, if you've got data in your company that you use to get work done, to be able to move workloads across different locations or across different groups, that's what we solve the problem of. Think of us as the next generation of what were file technologies you purchased in the past. So if you were thinking 10 years ago about, well, I've got to refresh my NetApp or my Isilon or my Windows file server, now you want to be thinking like, what is the cloud version of that? And to think about the cloud version of that, you're not thinking about NAS devices anymore, even though that's our name, that's where we come from. Nasuni stands for NAS Unified. What you're really thinking about is what is a file data services platform that can store and protect all of my files and give me access to it. And that's what we've built. And when I say we've built that on top of Google Cloud, what I mean is that we use Google Cloud Storage, specifically the object storage that they offer, as the foundation of what we do. In other words, every file that you put into Nasuni is going to go into your Google Cloud Storage account. And that Google Cloud Storage account is really, really useful because it can grow and grow and grow. So that's really significant for us because it means we can centralize all your data in one place, centralize your data in a way that it can be easily managed, but most importantly, it can be easily scaled. And what I mean by that is that we have a global file system. That's the first core platform component. We call it UniFS. That global file system is all built on those objects you put in Google Cloud Storage. That means every piece of data that goes into our file system becomes an object. What's also really important is every piece of metadata also becomes an object. So if I create a folder, all of a sudden that's an object now as well. Now, here's a really, really important thing that differentiates us from everyone else, and it's going to be part of why we have a superpower today that no other technology can match. And I don't say those words lightly. I really, really don't say those words lightly. What I'm saying is that we have a versioning system that is beyond what other file systems can offer at scale. That versioning system does this. Every time I make a change to a file, every time I make a change to a directory inside of my file infrastructure, inside my volume, I put a little file, a little object inside of the object store. We call it a manifest file. That manifest file can become a restore point for a folder, a restore point for a file. This is going to become really important later. But just realize this, every time I write to Nasuni, every time I write into the Nasuni file system, and I commit that, I'm creating a little restore point. That restore point can exist at any file, any folder, and across time. So to give you an example of what these restore points do for you, it means that if I want to go back and get another version of a file or a folder, I can use that restore point for that. To give you a sense of the scale of this, we've got customers that have been with us for 8, 10, 12 years now. Some of the biggest customers that we have are some of our longest standing customers. The one I like to use as an example here is a architectural engineering firm. They've been with us about 6 years now. They started with 400 terabytes of files on what we call kind of the front end of the file system. Like if I opened up my Windows Explorer, I'd see 400 terabytes. Those 400 terabytes have been changing, every minute, for literally for years. Today, they have 1.8 billion restore points in their system. 1.8 billion. What does that mean? Here it is. If they get hit by ransomware, they get to restore. They have the choice of restoring back to any of those 1.8 billion restore points. Now, what that means practically is I am not limited by, let's say, your backup windows. I'm not limited by whether or not I have captured an incremental or I've captured a full backup or whether I'm using, a snapshot versioning. What it means is I have more granularity to restore into my system. The net of that is for us to restore, whether it's one file, one folder, whether it's a folder that contains 10 files or a folder that contains 100 million files. It's about changing one little directory restore point in the system. So if you go to Nasuni or you Google Nasuni ransomware demo, you will see us restore 100 million files in literally 36 seconds. And the reason for that is because of what we've built into it. So I want to say that first, because that is a core capability of ours. No Nasuni customer has ever paid the ransom. We wouldn't be able to do that if we didn't have underneath all of it this massively scalable storage system called Google. And Google is what allows us to just grow those number of files, those number of restore points over time. Now you might be asking yourself, okay, that sounds like a lot of files. That sounds like a lot of restore points. That could be a lot of money. It's not, because the cloud storage, object storage, is the most inexpensive tier or the most inexpensive storage technology that's around today. In fact, one of the great things about Google is they have led the market in how not just the functionality of object storage and Google Cloud Storage, but the pricing around that as well, which means they have made it much, much less expensive for any customer to be able to store billions and billions of files or objects or whatever you need inside Google Cloud Storage. So we will be happy to do a comparison against any technology. We know that even with our 1.7 billion restore points, 2.5 billion restore points, 400 terabytes, a petabyte of files, it is going to be significantly cheaper than any other option you have to store your data. So that is just the first level of what I just talked about there. So it's Nasuni Global File System. Around that, we have this thing called the Nasuni Edge. That is a virtual machine that runs inside of Google or can run inside of your VMware environment, Hyper-V environment. That's what looks just like a file server. That's how you access your file system. So I'm going to access my file system through these little servers. So the file system lives inside of cloud storage, but it gets accessed through these edges. You've got things like a management console to be able to access that, and then you've got Nasuni APIs to be able to orchestrate this. So if you're a more sophisticated organization that uses a lot of Ansible or uses Terraform, we work really well with all of those. And I won't get into too much of this, but we do have this thing called our orchestration center, and that is if you get to a point where you have a large shared volume and you're sharing across lots of locations, and it doesn't have to be lots of locations, it could be any more than one, it could be 2 locations. And you want those different locations to be in sync with one another. You want to make sure that if I am in my New York office and I'm writing to the Acme presentation, and someone else is in LA and they're writing to that same presentation, let's call it sort of a design file. Those are usually the ones that we see a lot of. You want to make sure that it's going to be locked and it's going to be secure so that whoever's writing on one won't be overwriting on the other. And for a lot of files, like more basic Office docs, that's where Google has a fantastic co-editing, co-authoring system for that. But for all of these kind of specialty applications, they still rely on just basic file locking. And that's where we come in, because we can take those locks that show up on those individual edge appliances and make sure that they're respected across different locations. So you've got your platform components, you've got a huge file system, you've got your edge, you've got the ability to use it anywhere you want. Now, what do you get from that? Well, you get storage. You get an unlimited amount of storage. This is one thing that people love about it, especially if you happen to have really large volumes that you keep having to re-architect around your storage system. You never have to do that with Nasuni. You want to put 1 billion files, that's fine. You want to put 2 billion files, that's fine. I like to say, as long as Google keeps giving us objects, you're going to keep getting more files, capacity in your system. Data protection, just went over that part. We use Google the way that, or we use Google Cloud Storage the way that not a lot of other companies do, because we consider our versions to be objects as well inside the system. Security. One thing I'll say about this is, and this is a very inside baseball, somewhat geeky comment on this, but if you know anything about the world of security and the standards that have been created, especially around OpenPGP, if you happen to go look at the IEEE spec for that, you'll see 6 people on that application. One of those is our chief scientist. He is also one of the founding engineers from Akamai. His name is David Shaw. David has built from day one at Nasuni security built into the system. He is always thinking about how to make sure that what you put into Nasuni is going to be secure. The main way is because of how we use encryption keys and where they live in the environment. And I can assure you that you will always have the most secure system that is going to be interacting with cloud storage because of the way that we've designed that. And that's something that we'd love to get into more details on as well if you want to dive into that. But it's also the foundation for why we can exist across so many different locations, hybrid or in the cloud, without having to worry about setting up substantially difficult security or complex security perimeters. File sync, I talked a little bit about that. Data in 2 different locations, want to make sure it's in sync. Edge performance, that basically means that these VMs that live on the edge, they can be sized to whatever your performance is. If you are a storage person, if you were ever charged with sizing out an Isilon or NetApp or what used to be a VNX or Unity system, if that was ever in your purview of things that you had to do, you knew that you had this kind of like dual set of goals around both like the storage size and the performance of the box. We have separated that out. Storage is now something that grows inside of Google Cloud. The box is all designed for performance. The virtual machine, I should say, is all designed for performance. So if I want lots and lots of IOPS, but a small amount of cache, you can do that. If I want a small amount of cache or a small amount of IOPS, large cache, you can do that too. And our pricing model is this. We don't charge based on the number of edges you have. We charge based on your global capacity. That's the other really cool thing about us. You can have 100 terabyte volume, and the 100 terabyte volume after 10 years could be 150 terabytes inside of Google Cloud Storage. We're still charging 100 terabytes for that. The 100 terabyte volume could be shared across 20 different locations. 10 terabytes are in each location. We're still charging 100 terabytes for that. We want to make it very, very easy for you just to think of the very simple thing of I'm going to store data on Nasuni, access it wherever I need access to it. App integrations, you're going to see more and more of that in the future. With our ability to integrate with some cool things you'll see actually in the very short-term future with some Google Cloud integrations that I'll show you in the demo. A short plug here in Nasuni Labs. It's my pet project. If you go to GitHub and you search for Nasuni Labs, it's a bunch of open source technologies that we use to be able to integrate with a lot of third parties. It's a lot of fun stuff. But now I'll talk about, that's all the basic stuff. So if you showed up at Nasuni, you were a customer from up until let's say about a year ago, not even that, probably about 5 months ago, 6 months ago, that's what you got with Nasuni, all the built-in work. Now, not only do you get that same ransomware capability of being able to restore to all those different restore points, we've gone a step beyond that with ransomware protection. We can tell you when an attack hits. We can identify based on known signatures. We can tell you what the effect is right away. We can email your administrators right away. That's an add-on service that we provide to our customers. And what that gives them is the ability to know, is something in my environment that I should be worried about? Do I need to resolve it soon? And this is a step beyond what we did with the ability to recover so quickly. We have that built in. That's always going to be there. You can recover as quickly as you want to recover because of all those different restore points. But now we're going to alert you when it happens. And that's just the first step. The first step is we have this suite of just daily updated signatures of files that look like ransomware files to us. And we use that to alert different administrators about the things that you would need to do to be able to mitigate that attack. But what's coming in the future, it's going to be really amazing. It's a lot of stuff that's built around our own set of heuristics, our own set of AI about what's coming in and what could be attacking. It's going to be built around the ability to do automatic resolution of some of these attacks. Very, very cool stuff. But what I want to talk about today, though, is actually the next thing here, which is our Nasuni Access Anywhere. And this is the result of an acquisition that we made very recently, a company that had been really the leader in the space of how can I enable remote work? How can I enable the ability to access lots and lots of data from different locations? So I'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. And this sounds a lot like what Ben had been talking about earlier in terms of some of the challenges that he sees or some of the new trends that we see. And I think this is going to resonate with a lot of you, right? Remote and hybrid workers, right? If you've got teams that are no longer in the office, or teams that have just, you've decided they really do deserve to be in not just a branch office, but really, out on their own inside of home offices. This is a great opportunity to get them into that centralized system to be able to look at the same set of files. Offices with limited infrastructure. This was happening well before the pandemic. We went from, I remember when we were talking about how we create these office in the box, like a full, integrated suite of technologies that you would just ship out to a remote office. And it'd usually be like a print server and a domain server, and then some kind of file service. And that's where Nasuni was always part of this kind of consolidated stack. Well, that limited infrastructure is just getting more and more limited over time. It's getting thinner and thinner and thinner. So if you want to be in an office and you don't want to put a domain controller there, if you want to be in an office and maybe you want some kind of local access to files, but you actually don't want to put an entire infrastructure around it, you really need someone who thinks about security, being at the edge, like way at the edge, like us, and has a very, very small footprint that can leverage a lot of the technologies that are available through the cloud. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then most importantly, secure external file folder collaboration. We see this all the time, right? The boundaries of your organization are, they've always been a little bit porous, but they're even becoming more so, as we've gone through this pandemic. What I mean by that is that I need to be working with people that aren't necessarily part of my organization, which up to this point had been people that aren't in my Active Directory domain. But being able to do that in a secure way, being able to do that so you have control over how people get access to it, and I can monitor who's accessing what in the system, all of that is really, really important to have in a product. And that's one of the things that we get with Nasuni Access Anywhere. So let me talk a little bit more about some of this work, the remote and hybrid users. So you need to stay in sync with ongoing projects from locations. I like some of Ben's descriptions of people in sort of different locations and the sort of serpentine route of how I get from the beginning of work to the end of work. So much of that has to do with the fact that if I'm remote and I'm distributed, sometimes we forget that we need to consolidate. We need to then provide some sort of counterbalance to the fact that everyone is everywhere. One of the easiest ways to do that is to consolidate your data into one place, but make it really easy to find it and really easy to be able to work on it. So for us, we've worked really carefully on figuring out how we can optimize bandwidth in locations. And Nasuni has had a great experience with this over time. We've had a number of customers come to us because we are so good at managing locations with not just low bandwidth, but inconsistent bandwidth. A lot of companies have come to Nasuni in the past because we've done such great work in taking a volume and sharing it between, let's say, Southeast Asia and the US. Because we know in India and parts of China, you're not always going to be online. And so we've set up our system so that you don't have to have access to that core remote or to that core file system just to make sure that you have local access to that. So we spent a lot of time designing our system knowing that there's not going to be full consistent access to it. But then secure high performance file access. So being able to get to those files without having to put a VPN around it. There's some very, very new innovations we've got coming out on this one. But today, using the web browser to be able to get to your file system, a fantastic way of getting lots and lots of data, and a really smart way in which you can show just the data that you need to be able to work on that. And what that means is, I may not need the entire file present for me to be able to do things I need to do on it. Maybe I just need metadata. Maybe I just need to really search, work across metadata. And then obviously the offline access with local sync. That's me getting onto a plane. I need to be working on the plane. That is me in these remote areas where I might not have consistent access to the internet, and having that local cache on your laptop or on your desktop to be able to work on files. And that's what you get with Nasuni Access Anywhere. We have things called our cloud drive, which you can mount as local drives. You also have things like your like I was saying, the access to the sync client that you can actually download for us as well. So Office with limited infrastructure. So this is a little bit different. This is where there's still a little bit amount of like IT control. So you still want to be able to have a location for people to work out of, but you want to make sure that those locations are optimized for the type of work that goes on there. And a lot of this is turning into very similar things that you've seen with the very remote side, which is being able to set things up without VPN access. So a lot of it's the fact that you want to be able to do centralized control over these locations, and it reduces the risk of data loss, and ensures that there's a standard security footprint or posture across all the locations. But a lot of the reasons why you might have this limited infrastructure is because you need something local to be able to work off of your larger files. And so if you've got a cache that's local there, if you've got some cache that you're working off of, you need to make sure that you can send it back to the core quickly. So with Access Anywhere, there's a lot of technologies we've built in to do what we call this accelerated file transfer. And that's being smart about how we chunk the files. It's being smart about how we compress the files, how we move files back and forth. And it's about using some of the most kind of cutting edge technologies in this regard. One thing that may not be obvious here for an infrastructure company like ours, but because we love technology and we are always looking outside of the kind of suite of technologies here, is that we pay really close attention to things like the protocols that are being innovated on. And so again, hats off to Google. They came up with a protocol called QUIC. They named it really well too. It's called QUIC. And it is becoming the emerging protocol for moving data. It's and Ben, I don't know if this is true or not. I think like 90% of YouTube uses QUIC and people just don't know it. I think 50% of Facebook uses QUIC. It is one of those like consumer protocols behind the scenes that every major large application is needs to be aware of, but corporate technology has yet to really adopt it. Well, we're here, we're doing it, we're adopting it, we're putting it out there right now. So accelerated file transfer, think of it as we're going to move files the same way that YouTube moves them, super, super fast using cutting edge technology. And then productivity tools that you need around this. I was talking about the cloud drive. I'm going to show you a little about some cool metadata search in a second as well. And then finally, this being able to securely share across that sort of corporate boundary. And that has a lot to do with where is there the gold file. I love the thing Ben had about like, okay, well, who's got which version? Well, wait, who's working on what version of the file? This is that screams out for having a solution where you're centralizing. That's what we do. We centralize it. Now we centralize it. Now we want you to be able to share it. So it's that kind of tug between both centralizing and then distributing. But when you share it, we have control over who's seeing it, how they're accessing it, what versions they're accessing, and all of the auditing around who is looking at what. So that is part of the reason why we set up through Access Anywhere this ability to securely move files and folders and to collaborate and have control over who has access to it. There's a lot of multi-factor authentication that we've built into the system. I won't get a chance to demonstrate that, but the entire thing is built with sort of the most modern sets of authentication tools. Again, fast file transfer for those external clients. I don't want to steal the thunder of what's going to be announced, I think, in about 3 months, but I mentioned QUIC. There's another cool thing we're doing with QUIC. It's coming out. You'll love it. It's going to also be able to help you move files really quickly. And then don't lose those files, because you're going to be able to keep that gold copy in the cloud and have it secured. And just a point on that one, when we talk about the gold copy being in that one location or that one bucket inside of Google, that one Google Cloud Storage bucket, what it really means is you're entrusting Google to this one, think of it as sort of a logical organization of your files, right? It's going to be called, like, let's say my projects volume. But what Google does is they make that incredibly redundant, and they make it geo-redundant, and they put it all, depending on the level of storage you set up, they deal with all the things that up to this day have been really, really hard for small companies, which is, do I have lots of copies stored? Can I make sure that the reliability is really high? Can I make sure the availability is really high? Can I make sure the redundancy is really high? The thing I love about any of the cloud providers, but particularly Google, you actually put an object into Google Cloud Storage, and immediately it has this level of protection to it. So really, really important part of that, which is you want a gold copy, you want it to be persistent, you want it to be protected, and you can't get better than an infrastructure that they've built pretty much their entire suite of platforms around of products around. This is the moment. This is the demo. Wish me luck. I'm about to show you what Nasuni Access Anywhere looks like. And it's going to start with me sharing my screen. If I can get that done, that'll probably be a big step. Okay. Hopefully everyone can see me logging in. You might be asking yourself, I thought his name was John, and his name is John, but he is using Bobby's account right now. All right, what are we looking at here? This is Nasuni Access Anywhere. This is my cloud files. It's actually backed up by a Nasuni appliance, by a Nasuni volume. I've got a lot of stuff here, but I'm going to focus on my data set. I'm going to focus particularly on this auto tagging folder that I have here, and I'll tell you why we're calling it auto tagging in a second. Cool things I can do here. If I wanted to open a file here, if I want to open up a JPEG, I can do that from here. If I want to look at this file and I want to be able to see what's in there, I can do that from here as well. Obviously, uploading files. This looks a lot like what you'd expect from something like a Box or a Dropbox. Super easy to work with. I can choose files locally from my system. I can download them here. I can create my folders here as well. It's a very easy, responsive system. I can also do some really cool things here as well. I can search. So what are the things that I wanted to search for? Let's see. Well, let's go with bridge here. I wanted a picture of the Manhattan Bridge. I want a picture of some landmarks. Do I have a Manhattan Bridge picture here? Fantastic. Really easy to search. And if I want to show my the info about this, I've got all this interesting data here. All this interesting data that's really made easily available here. And if I would change this over time, this is where the restore points come. If I decide to upload another version of that and change that, it's really simple to do that. If I want to create a shared link here, I want to share that. Copy that link to copy that to the clipboard, and I can share that out like I was talking about before. What if I want to share the entire folder? Create that shared link there. Manage my shared links here. I don't have any shared links to manage at this point, but sharing it with different email addresses here. I can even name who can access it. I can set expiration. I can set passwords on it. A really rich set of sharing features here. But I know we have a few minutes left, and I want to make sure we get to questions. So I'm going to walk through something which I think is really, really cool here. I'm going to go through my search. And let's say I didn't want to find a bridge here, but what I really wanted to find was images of people, because I'm actually doing let's say this is for my marketing department. And I could use something like Google Vision. What if I could use Google Vision, which is a fantastic tool to be able to extract meaning from images, right? And I wanted people that were smiling. What would this show me? This would show me this, that with Google Images, I can find a bunch of images. I didn't have to do anything, but Google figured out that everyone here is smiling. And I just put 2 in here for the end here. I don't know if you all have heard the passing of Her Majesty, Queen Elizabeth. And those are fantastic smiles for her. But how did this happen? I literally just uploaded these, as you can tell, these Queen Elizabeth pictures. How did I do that? How did that occur? Well, that's why this was called auto tagging, because whenever I send something to this folder, whenever I just upload to this folder, it creates a task that will automatically send an image to Google. And what it will do is it will contact Google Vision. And as you can see here, it's going to go ahead and find lots of tags associated with that. So I haven't opened up this image yet, but this is telling me it is a commercial building. It's got a facade. Let's see if it's right. Looks right to me. A very prominent picture of the sky. That one I had earlier. It's the one. Let's get that. Oh, does that not? No Google Vision on that one. Sorry about that. So what is this? Orange, automotive, vehicle, lighting, car. Interesting to see what this is. Google Vision nailed it. Look at that. Didn't have to do anything other than send it to Google right away. And so what's cool about this is you've got one place where you've centralized your files, one place where I can easily search through my files. Again, if I want to look for, say, just a word that says, I'm going to get rid of this for a second, that says Queen from Queen Elizabeth. I've got a JPEG. I've got another JPEG of hers. But if I want to use tags, again, I can search through tags. I want to use, again, cool things that you would expect, modification date, modified metadata. All this is just part of the Access Anywhere. So it gives you a really rich place to look for everything that you would need. And I'm just about to the end, so I'm just going to go ahead and get back to here. Can you guys still see my screen? Hopefully not. Hopefully we're back to the demo now, or we're back to questions. All right. Well, I'm going to hand it back to Scott right now. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and I'm looking forward to seeing what this $50 best question is that's going to get the $50 Amazon card.
Yeah, we'll actually pick that afterwards, so that way people who ask questions at the last minute don't get eliminated. And Ben, I guess I've got a question for you first. Like John, I loved your slides with the flow chart and the text conversation with employees about where the quarterly reports are. But how is Google approaching that new way of working with respect to the tools and the systems that your employees are using to be productive in a remote or hybrid work environment?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. It's funny. So I've been with Google Cloud for about a dozen years, and we weren't called Google Cloud at the time. So from the very early days, and Google has this perception in the market that we've got everything figured out, right? And so as a new employee, you join the company, and you've seen the articles about it being a great place to work, and it totally is. I drink the Kool-Aid when it comes to Google as an amazing place to work. But I think a lot of new Googlers are kind of surprised that you run into some of the issues you've run into at other stops in your career, right? Some systems don't talk to each other. Some system, the data from a CRM system to a product support ticketing system to whatever, there's stuff that is broken here as much or more because of our size than at any company, right? And so I do think that we were very early adopters of things like web-based collaboration tools, right? I mean, Gmail was created at Google, right? Google Drive, right? Our whole workspace platform. And so I think maybe we had a little bit of a head start for what the current sort of work environment has turned into. And we've always been pretty flexible with, letting people work from home occasionally if they need to. And, but boy, it's changed. It's accelerated. One of the things that I think that we took for granted before the COVID-19 pandemic and before the sort of rapid shift of the way that we're all working in the last couple of years is that I think that there was kind of this special collaboration thing, this efficiency that Google has that is hard to put your finger on, but it's the result of our office spaces, right? We have the company, you've probably seen photos or, I know, John, you're out in Sunnyvale, right? The Google offices are pretty amazing, pretty significant investments from the company to create spaces where collaboration and communication can just sort of happen organically. But it was all designed in person, right? And so it's been kind of cool to see us think about how do we recapture some of that magic in the new sort of remote and hybrid system. So very tactically, that's meant, new systems for managing our physical office space, right? We've shifted from every employee sort of having a dedicated spot in the office with a desk and a more traditional kind of setup to a more agile setup where you can kind of move around and be there when you need to and book. So there's a whole series of internal tools that have needed to be built to support that. I sit within the cloud go-to-market organization. There's been a ton of investments in sort of how do we sort of track our customer relationships in a way that might be different than it used to be a few years ago, right? When we're not, doing as many sort of in person taking your prospect or your customer out to dinner, and we still try to do that whenever we can, but the world is different now, right? So how do we capture customer sentiment and the customer life cycle in a more remote and hybrid type of place? So kind of a long-winded answer, but I guess the crux of it is everything's kind of on the table all the time at Google. Like, I always kind of joke with people on my team who are surprised when things are broken. It's like, well, if all of our systems were perfect and super stable, then maybe we wouldn't be growing as quickly as we'd hope to be, right? Like, I view a little bit of system chaos as a sign that, like, we're doing good stuff and we're in an evolving sort of dynamic corner of the economy. So we've rethought a whole bunch of systems. We've added a whole bunch of features to products like Google Meet or Google Drive to solve for a lot of the things that John was talking about with the Nasuni Access Anywhere solution, right? So both our internal systems for our workers, our employees, our external systems for our users, and our partner systems for companies like Nasuni to take our platform and build on it have all undergone tremendous change in the last few years. And frankly, I don't see it slowing down anytime soon.
Yeah. Really, really interesting. Thanks for that window into what's happening at Google.
Sure.
Appreciate it. So John, great demo, and I love the data point about, what was it, 1.8 billion, data points with one customer there, or restore points. So are the files accessed through Nasuni Access Anywhere also covered under Nasuni's ransomware protection?
Absolutely. So yeah, the Queen is protected at this point. So like when I uploaded those files with the Queen, they're protected. If I were to change that, if I were to delete that, it's protected. The reason is that everything is centralized into a Nasuni volume, and every Nasuni volume has this infinite level of protection to it. When I say infinite level, you can determine, like, after 6 months, I want to start, removing versions, or after 10,000 versions, I want to start pruning or something like that. But the vast majority of our customers understand that the trade-off between adding in these incremental versions and the cost of it is definitely worth the ability, the option of being able to go back in time and find the things that you may have lost. So we allow you to keep as many versions as you want at a really, 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 really low price. And anything that touches a Nasuni system is covered under that. The gold copy is inside your Nasuni volume. That Nasuni volume is built on Google Cloud Storage. So everything inside there gets versioned the same way.
Okay. All right. Super. Another question sort of related to maybe that gold copy concept. We have a question here from Angie, who's asking, what if someone's changing the same information at another location? Who wins in that situation?
So it depends on what you have enabled on Nasuni. So I could say I want a folder enabled with global file locking. And so if it's global file locking, whoever opens the file first locks the file. You get it's just like you and I were in the same building. We were working off of the same shared server. Same exact protocol. We use the same semantics. Everything works as if you were in the same place. It just so happens that you're in multiple locations. You're working across different appliances. When it comes to the you don't have that on, then we create conflict files, and those conflict files are basically if I've written a file and my appliance snaps that file, and in the same time someone else has come along and written a file during the time that I've snapped, or since that last snap, then that second snap will create a conflict file with it, because before that second appliance moves its data into the cloud, it is going to synchronize with that most recent version. So to give you a quick view of how this happens, when I was talking about our orchestration center, the best way to think of it is it does two things. One is it provides this massive global file locking system where every time I open up a file, I call up to it, I say, hey, does anyone have that lock? Yes, no, you can open up the file. That does something around like 40 billion transactions a year. It's a really huge system. It's across the globe in 6 different locations. The other thing that system does, the orchestration center, is it's a very, very basic traffic cop between appliances or edges that are sharing a volume. So if I've got my projects volume and I've got an edge in New York, I've got an edge in Los Angeles, I've got one in London, and we start working on that. So if Angie is working in New York and I'm working in LA, and we're both on the same projects volume, as soon as she starts to save data, that appliance reaches out and says, hey, I've got data that needs to get pushed into the gold copy inside Google Cloud Storage. So it calls up, it sends a note up to a request up to our orchestration center, which basically says, my name is file GUID X, and I have dirty data on volume GUID Y. So the NOC itself has no idea other than that, this GUID is asking for what we call the volume lock. And so our orchestration center is that traffic cop that says, all right, New York, no one else has the lock, you get to use it. Now, New York says, okay, well, let me get the most recent version of the system. Let me do all my calculations. Anything changed? What changed? Now I'm going to create a new version and send that up to the cloud. While that's going on, I might be in LA again working in that same location. My appliance calls up and says, hey, I'd like the lock. It says, nope, New York has it. You got to wait. New York has it. It's got to wait. I keep calling back until it says, okay, it's free now. First thing I do is I get the lock. No one else can actually do anything to Google Cloud Storage. But now, first thing I do is I get the latest version. When I get that latest version, it's going to say, hey, Angie was working on a file. John, you're working on that file. We're going to create, let's say we're both working on the acme.pdf file. We're going to create a conflict file called acme.johncapello.pdf. And we're going to alert that there's a conflict there. We're going to alert the administrators and anyone else you kind of set up an alert list around that. And that is going to then need to get resolved somehow within the system. So either Angie's going to work on it, I'm going to work on it, our administrators are going to work on it, depending on how you configure that. But it's basically like, the first person to commit and the first person to submit, to be able to push to the cloud, is going to be the gold copy. Anything after that is the conflict. And we leave it up to us to then resort to figure that out. If we had global file locking on, that wouldn't have happened, because Angie would have opened up the file, she would have been working on it. And when I tried to open up, it would say, someone's got it, can't work on it yet.
Okay. All right. Smart stuff. Probably one more time for maybe one more audience question. We have one here from Ned, who's wondering, does Nasuni Access Anywhere solution have the capability to upload, download, and copy files despite low bandwidth and network latency issues? So I know you talked about that a little bit in the presentation about like India and China, but just sort of like maybe even in a North American setting, what do you see there?
Yeah. Obviously, I'm in a hotel where I've got access right now. But if I were somewhere else and it were hard for me to get through, you would be able to set up a job that would try to upload, and we continue to try to upload. You'd set up jobs that try to download, and then have a similar with Access Anywhere. It's a little bit different than what I was talking about with the orchestration center, but a very similar set of behaviors where it will try to upload files and commit files and download files to get onto your device. So it is smart enough to know how to be persistent. So it knows, like, I tried doing something, I need to keep up with that until I reach a certain threshold point, which I think is admin configurable, before it abandons that. And the appliances, the edges that we've developed as well before Access Anywhere, have very similar types of behaviors within those. The idea that I can be committing parts of files up to the object store and before the entire file goes up, that's incredibly important if you're dealing with large files, low bandwidth or low consistency environments. So yeah, all that's built into it. And then Access Anywhere has this whole thing on top of it. We have a thing called MStream, where even if it's low bandwidth, we just make the most out of the bandwidth. And that has to do with a bunch of other tricks that we do at the protocol level. And like I said before, we're on top of like some really cool new stuff coming out. Hat tip again to Google on Quick. So.
All right. Tricks at the protocol level. Love it. Always good stuff. Well, it looks like we're running out of time, but John Capello, if somebody wants to get started with Nasuni Access Anywhere or find out more, what's their next step?
Reach out to Nasuni. Go to nasuni.com. Either sign up for a demo, sign up to speak to one of our sales reps. If you know your Google Cloud rep as well, talk to Google as well. That's an easy way to get an introduction to us. We have a very strong relationship there, very enabled with their field. So I'd say, in fact, I'd probably say start there first through Google. If you're not a Google customer yet, come to us. You'll probably soon become one. But either of those cases, either of those ways.
Okay. All right. Super. Well, John and Ben, thanks both of you for a fantastic presentation. Great discussion. Really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Ben.
I enjoyed it. Thanks very much.
Okay. And finally, it's time for our $300 Amazon gift card prize drawing. And the winner of that gift card today is David Moriguchi from California. So congratulations to David. We'll be in touch to get you your card. And as John mentioned, we will be selecting a best question winner, and we'll contact that person afterward as well. So with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I do want to thank Nasuni and Google for making this event possible. And thanks as always for attending and for all of your great questions during the event. That concludes today's webinar. Have a great rest of your day.